Welcome to the Gita in Action podcast. My name is Radha Priti, and I am here with a family of seekers. And we are journeying through the Bhagavad Gita. We're in the third chapter now. We're talking about really just its relevance to our lives, the lessons that we learn from it, the information that we gain from it. And I kind of had kind of a really strange experience last night. So I wanted to that led to like some realizations that then led to like kind of an idea for us to do together, and kind of like a call to action for our seekers in our community. So I wanted to kind of start with that and share my experience with you guys, which is still really, really fresh. Usually I don't share things that are so fresh, but it was so impactful to me and that I thought, I'm just going to take the opportunity and share it and see what happens. So bear with me because it's still really fresh and I'm still kind of developing my realizations around it. But last night I went to bed like at a normal time. I know this is crazy. We're not even going to get into the Gita initially. First, we're just going to talk about this and the realizations and the call to action, and then we'll get into the Gita, I promise. Well, I don't, because maybe people want to share and it won't happen, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so last night I went to bed normal with my daughter, and um, she's like, confusing nights with days. So she's like up all night the past couple nights, which has been, rough. And my mom's also here. My mom flew in from Missouri. My mom lives in Missouri, and she came in, and this is her second trip here since my daughter's been born, which has been a month. So it's really nice. And the first trip out, I didn't wake her up at night. And then like when my daughter would be crazy. And the next morning she'd be like, "Oh, how was your night?" I'm like, "Oh, I didn't really sleep." She's like, "Oh, you should wake me up. You should wake me up." I'm like, I don't, I feel bad waking you up. She's like, "No, wake me up." So this trip, I'm like, "Okay, I'll wake her up." If she wants to help, I'll wake her up. So my baby's, not going to sleep, hungry, eat like fussy, all the things. So finally, like 4 a.m., I'm like, okay, I'm going to go wake my mom up. So I, bring my mom, my baby in a bottle, and I'm like, "Here you go, mom. Thank you." And then I go back to bed. And now at this point, I only have like an hour and a half for sleeping. But I lay in bed and I just like cannot get this conversation that I had with my mom last night out of my head. And which I really wasn't expecting, but it was like so disturbing to me that I just like could not sleep. So this conversation that I have with my mom last night when she arrives, my mom and dad are divorced. I think I've talked about my dad before. He's an alcoholic, unfortunately. And she's telling me this story that he went to see my sister for Christmas. And he does this thing where my sister has kids that are a little bit older, and he goes and he sees their family every month. And it's really nice because honestly, he didn't really spend much time with us as kids. So it's really nice that he does that for her. But he's also, because he struggles with addiction, he's very like on and off. Like he'll like fall off the face of the planet for a while and then he'll show back up. And that's kind of like the dynamic. So there was a few months that they didn't see him and they didn't hear from him, and they were reaching out and they didn't hear from him. They didn't hear from him. They couldn't get a hold of him. He lives like a couple hours away from them. So they Googled him. And they saw what came up when they Googled him was like a mugshot. And uh it's like my mom's telling me this and I'm like, oh my gosh. Um, because he was driving while drinking. And so I'm immediately when she tells me this, I just feel like so terrible for my dad and all this suffering that he goes through with this addiction. And I know several of you have shared this week about addiction, and it sounds like honestly like one of the most painful, toughest things that we can experience in this material existence, this kind of addiction. And I'm sitting there and I'm like, oh, I don't want to look at the mugshot. I asked my mom, I'm like, "Mom, did you see it?" She's like, "Yeah, I saw it. It's really pretty much what you would expect it to look like." I'm like, okay, I think I'm going to look at it. So I Googled it and it came up, and it's like, it's just the strangest thing to see a mugshot of your dad online. Like your dad who's supposed to be like, your protector, take care of you, like strong. And then to see this, it's like, to me, he just like looks so old. He looks so sad and he looks so drunk. And it was just like so sad to see how much suffering he's been through. And so I'm thinking about this, and then I'm thinking about alcohol and just like how, terrible this is, these things that we turn to for like relief from this material existence that turn out to like be so poisonous to us and like, really even cause our demise over time. And it's such an illusion that we think these things, will make us feel better. And the thing is, we know how dangerous they are and how terrible they can be for us and our families and relationships and selves. But we do it anyway, because why? Because we're so miserable. I mean, why else would we do these kinds of things to ourselves, right? So this amount of suffering that goes on, and it's like epidemic, even to think about how it's so normal in our culture just to like, oh, do you take the edge off or you feel bad or, you had a tough week, just drink some alcohol or, what to speak of hard drugs or whatever it is. It's just like heartbreaking. So I'm just like sitting there, like feeling the heaviness of this suffering that goes on. And then I'm thinking like, wow, we are so blessed to have this philosophy that we're not the body and we're not the mind, to like really actually realize or absorb what this means about us, like what that actually means that we're not the body and the mind and how powerful, like what this can actually do for us in our lives if we can really realize it and imbibe it to even just to a small extent. Right. When I was in my 20s and I was kind of dealing with all of this stuff, this struggles with the relationship from my dad, the impacts and everything. I remember in my therapy session, my therapist told me, all these terrible experiences that I had. She's like, none of these things were about you. She's like, these were never about you. This was always about him. And it was like such an aha moment for me, just that realization that like all these experiences that my dad, that I felt, that I absorbed, that I took on, that I, created narratives around to mean something about myself were actually not me at all, right? Like I was so emotionally entangled with this mind and body of this other soul that I took that on to mean something about me, which it just like didn't. And when she told me this, it was like such a relief. It was like it, and it wasn't, and then it started the process of like forgiving somebody who's never asked for forgiveness, which is like a whole nother thing, which took like so many years to do. But that realization in itself was huge. Like, wow, this isn't me. This isn't about me. So like fast forward even to that, to think of the realization that, we're not our mind and body. Like the things my dad was putting on me was a product of his mind and body. But even that, I'm not even my own mind and body, right? Like that's not even the self. That's not even something to take on. And to think about how much we do that, how much we associate with these identifications, or we make a mistake and then we feel bad, or a relationship fails and we feel like a failure, right? To be able to like kind of pull all of these layers off and understand that that's not even you, all of your mistakes, all of your shortcomings, that's not even you. And we can create some space there. And when we can get to that real identity of what we actually are, right? This soul, this part and parcel of God, a spark of divinity, that's where like the unconditional love exists, right? The love, the acceptance, the compassion, right? When we can really kind of peel those layers off. So it made me so grateful for this philosophy, because this is what even happens in these like addiction cycles. People get so into this ego mentality. They're so identified with their experiences or their emotions or whatever it is that they're going through, their mistakes, that then it leads to this. They need some kind of way to medicate themselves because it's just too much, right? It just becomes too much. Like it's not even this alternate reality is just too painful. So to come back to the real reality, to come back to the fact that we're soul and we're just having this human experience, and what we're experiencing isn't us, is so valuable. It literally could save your life. Where these drugs, these things that we turn to medicate the pain temporarily that end up killing us is such an illusion. And we're so fortunate, every one of us that is here right now, we're so fortunate to have met people in our lives to teach us these things, right? We could all think about the person who brought us here, or that time in your life that you kind of maybe came to your knees and you're like, I need something more. And now you're here and now you have access to this knowledge, right? You don't have to suffer in this way. We don't have to turn to alternative ways to medicate ourselves. I joke about things like Netflix, and these are also alternative ways, but what to speak of when we get so desperate that we get so addicted to things that are so tamasic, so dangerous for us, that are so destructive to ourselves and our families. We're so blessed. Every one of you, every person that's listening to this is such a special soul to even have an interest in this, because whether or not you really even know it, it could liberate you. It can change your entire life. It could change your entire life in this world. What to speak of, your future existence is if you could really, if we could really imbibe these things. So that was like huge, huge for me, and then I started thinking about family attachments, because these attachments are so strong. Like I saw my dad's face in that, and I felt like I felt his pain. And it was like and it was like crushing. And then I think about my daughter, how close I feel to my daughter. And my friend told me before I had a child, that it's really special to have a child, because you understand, you start to get a glimpse into how God loves us and how he wants us to love everyone, which is like such a beautiful thing. And I actually think about that often, that she told me that, because it's an opportunity for us. These relationships are an opportunity for us to get a glimpse into that experience, and to understand what, our higher calling is, what we're really being called to do. So these, like, and with my daughter, there's like, when I look at my daughter, there's like not a single personality trait or thing that she could do, or, that would make me not love her. Right? Like, it's so easy, but these things are actually so hard. So I'm thinking about these family attachments, and I'm thinking, if we could have this level of love, if the suffering that I felt when I saw my dad's photo, if I could feel that kind of suffering when I see it in everybody, because how many people out there are experiencing this level of suffering? I mean, just in our thread this week, we had like, what, 3 shares maybe of people that of our community that has been through these kinds of experiences, and luckily came out on the other end by some, stroke of mercy, which is incredible. But so many people don't, so if we could, if the compassion that I felt when I saw my dad's face in the pain, if we could feel that for everybody around us, if some of these, family attachments we could take to our advantage, and for advantage relative to our evolution, and understand that this is how we should feel for humanity at large, right? And this was Arjuna's struggle. This was Arjuna's struggle exactly. He felt this strong family attachment when he's on that battlefield, this compassion for his relatives. And this very thing that he felt was his qualification to receive the spiritual knowledge, right? Because he had this soft heart. And that's so crucial. That's crucial for us, right? But he needed to expand this love and compassion. He needed to zoom out, and he needed to apply it to the entire society, right? To his entire community, to the world at large, to really be able to see what's best for the world, right? And what's even bigger than that is zooming out and realizing that the compassion that we feel for this body is kind of pointless. It's like when we think about the fact that this body is so temporary, and the soul is eternal, it goes on forever. We should have compassion for the soul, right? Our soul, other soul, the entire community soul at large. This is where the compassion should be. This body is just like a dress. It's just like a change of clothes, right? So this is like the ultimate zoom out. And this is why Krishna comes to teach Arjuna this. He says, look, I see that you're a very loving, compassionate, individual. Let's expand that. Let's take that. Let's zoom it out. Let's zoom it out for society at large. And let's zoom it out on the level of the soul and not the body. And that's so powerful, to teach him that we're not this body, and that lamenting for the body, it's not the end all. Right? If we can have that same compassion for the love for ourselves, for our family, for our community, and apply it on the soul level, how powerful it could be, right? And when we talk about applying it on the soul level, it's teaching God consciousness, either through your actions, your example, like we talked about this week, or the opportunities that you have with your friends, with your family, with whomever. this is really what we're called here to do in this life. This is like the highest calling that we can all have, right? Because it's the soul's matter. It's the soul's journey that matters. You can't take the body with you. We learn this in the Gita in the second chapter, right? Any progress that you make in this material existence, when you die, when we're done, it's staying here. That's it. But the spiritual progress that you make, you get to take that with you. We all get to take that with us. So that's really where the real investment is, right? That's really where we should be what we should be investing in, because that's what's going to reap these long-term rewards, these long-term benefits, is this investment in our soul. Right? For eternity, right? Imagine that for eternity, every as your soul evolves through and it's evolving, it's growing. That's what it's doing. It's not like there's a stop and then a start over like there is with your body, right? It's like it's just continually growing. Right? So it's just so powerful. If we could understand that the only real way to stop the suffering of humanity is this God consciousness, right? To heal that hole in the heart, that God-shaped hole in the heart, right? And heal it by connection with source. And that's the greatest service we can do for ourselves, for our families, for humanity at large, is to cultivate this, right? To be an example of this. Like what a difference this would make to the world. And this is what Arjuna is learning in the Gita, right? And this is what God teaches him. And again, how fortunate we are to have this knowledge, this wisdom, like just to even take a minute and appreciate that, right? To the point where we should feel an obligation to share it with the rest of the world, right? Because if we look around, they're suffering. It may not be in that intense form of addiction for everybody, but they're suffering. People are suffering. And it's our responsibility to pay it forward. So that was like I was laying in bed at, 4:00, just my mind's just like reeling from thing to thing, from just like the emotional impact of this picture that's so disturbing. I can't sleep, and hopefully I'll be able to sleep today. But anyway, so then this started making me think like how powerful this is that we all get together and we talk about the Gita, and we don't just like study it like a textbook, but we really get into it, and we try to relate to it, and we try to see how it's working in our lives and how we're working in it. We really try to connect with it in that way. And I appreciate that so much about this group. I don't know about you guys, but having these kinds of personal conversations, it sticks with you in like a different way. And when you really try to relate it to your life in that way. So I was thinking, for this next, in the fall, we're going to have a Gita retreat. And I've kind of been behind the scenes trying to solidify some details for this, because I really want like as much as our community as possible to try to come to this retreat. And as I was thinking about this, and I was thinking about this story, and I was thinking about how many of just like the Gita life lessons showed up in this, and how healing it was. And I'm thinking that, maybe for this retreat, if like as many of our seekers could come as possible, and people that are interested could do some seva. And that seva could be in the form of telling your own story and your own lessons from the Gita that you learned from it, right? Like how the Gita's wisdom weaves into your own life and your realizations from that. The service could be in like if you're good at kirtan and you want to lead a kirtan. It could be as simple as serving prasadam, serving food. It just some kind of service to contribute and to be a part. And then also kind of trying to help bring people in. And in this, we could kind of collaborate in building this retreat together and make it a super spiritual connecting experience for everybody. We can have a lot of kirtan. We can do some things with our bodies, do yoga, breath work. Maybe there's some people that, could volunteer to lead some things like that. And we can have these shares. People maybe, there's a lot of time between now and then. So especially the community that comes daily and, every week and listens to the Gita and shares, to really think yourself about how the Gita shows up in your life and prepare something to share about that, whether it be 5 minutes, 15 minutes, however long. And if that's something you want to do and you're not sure that you're up for it, I'm also willing to like help anybody with that, because it's a hard thing, but it's also very healing. And there's also nothing like sharing these realizations that really like solidify them for you and your life. So that's my call to action at the end there is that if we could all come together and kind of create this experience, co-create this experience together for us and for, people that we could bring in. I think it could be really powerful for all of us and hopefully the communities. So that's my spiel and my call to action. Um, does anybody want to share anything?
I do. I
Wonderful.
I had so many. I think this was just like this morning after I did my prayer, I was reading chapter 13, which talks about the field of action, nor of the action, the body, the super soul. So I feel like this connected. And after I did, I'm like, Krishna, this is too hard for me to take this early morning with 4 hours of sleep. Then I closed it. I'm like, okay, and you just explaining this, it helps. So many things came that I related to. I think one of the thing I still have hard time grasping my head around is I'm not the body piece because I feel the pain. Like I feel chronic uh, back pain and those pain. So I have hard time yeah saying that I'm not the body because I am feeling the pain. Uh, then there's this realization that also kind of came for me also last night is as I'm going through these multiple health issues is that I am not the body, but I need to take care of the body as a vehicle to live this life that I'm given, to have access to the soul, and hopefully pray to have access to the Supreme Soul. And because I feel like for so many years of my life, I didn't take care of the body, and and now I think everything is showing up as, mental health or just chronic medical issues. And yeah, that was a realization that I think it's hard for me to hold two things that to say that I'm not the body while I'm experiencing everything on daily basis. Um, but yeah, I feel like I now, as I feel those, I feel like there's glimpse of realizations that come, but then I have hard time holding on to them. Uh, but I guess I have to just show up daily to like these. So I appreciated you being vulnerable and sharing the story. It connected with me. Like when you said you felt his pain, your father's pain, and I feel like I feel the generation of pain, my mom's pain, my grandmother's pain, my sister's pain, because I have just seen them growing up, just suffering in their story, and it's stuck in me. And I feel like I feel like I'm stuck in my this so-called healing journey, quote unquote, because I'm trying to do everybody's work, a generational worth of work, and I'm having hard time saying I'm just one person and I'm not the controller to do
Mm-hmm.
their karma or their suffering. So I think there's a control piece definitely within me that I have to come to acceptance that um, I cannot end everybody's suffering as much as I love them. Um, yeah, so those are some things came, and I do struggle with forgiveness piece. I feel like I can read it, that forgiveness frees you. I feel like I can read it, but I think one of the question I had was, you said you forgave your father, and my question was, how did that forgiveness process looked like for you? Was it verbally or mentally just repeating, saying, you know, I don't know, but I feel like there are a few important people in my life that I'm having hard time forgiving. And then it's like I'm the prisoner to those emotional pain.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Wow. Thank you so much. It's so true. When we can't forgive, we hold on to this ourselves. And I think that was like even like my big motivation, like because these relationships like I are like layered, like I loved my dad, but then I had all this resentment and all this blame and all this, victim mentality because I was just continuing to live it out in my life, in my life, in my life. And I also couldn't accept him. I couldn't accept him. I couldn't accept our relationship. And I kept trying to change something that just wasn't mine to change, just wasn't mine to control, just like you said. So the forgiveness process for me, it was so multifaceted. It was like first realizing that I wasn't the center of all this, that this was all of his stuff and that I took it on and that it was mine to take on and it was mine to release. So kind of doing that personal work, seeing how it showed up in my life and trying to let it go in other areas. And like relationships, for example, like stop choosing to date alcoholics. Like that was pretty huge. So that was like one thing. Stop the cycle that's perpetrating in my life, or is that the word? That's just continuing on. And then the other thing with my dad's and our personal relationship was establish boundaries that made me feel safe and comfortable, that made me feel like he doesn't need to come over and stay at my house for a weekend and just binge drink in a way that I'm completely uncomfortable because it's scary being around him when he's like that, to be honest. So it was like just setting up those boundaries and enforcing them and and then just being okay with that, whatever the end was. And when you try to set up boundaries with these people that aren't used to you setting up boundaries, it's pretty awful at first, like terrible, like, and this is why you don't do it. This is why you're not used to doing it, because then they really turn it on. Like whatever you're used to getting from them, it's like times 10 when you try to set up a boundary to protect yourself. But it has to become more important to you to protect yourself and your own journey than to be entangled with them. You have to choose yourself. You have to choose yourself. And in that, once I was able to feel safe, and after a while, it took a couple of years, I'll be honest, I didn't even invite him to my wedding. But then there came a point where I called him, and it was like maybe a couple of years later, and I was like, I'll give this another try. I call him and I'm like, hey dad, um, and he's like, wow, Rach, I didn't expect to hear from you. I haven't heard from you. And I'm like, yeah, I just wanted to see how you're doing. He's like, I can't believe you're calling me. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you know why I haven't called you? He's like, yeah, I effed up. He's like, I effed up. I shouldn't have done it. I'm like, yeah, Dad, you can't do that. You can't talk to me like that. You can't act like that, or we're not going to have a relationship. He's like, I get it. And that was it. That was it. That was the end of like all of the how many years of like terrible behavior that I subjected myself to. Like that was the end of it. And that was maybe 4 years ago. But since then, since I've been able to do that for myself, and at the same time when I did that, I was okay with however he acted. Like I had been through so much with him that whatever his response was, I was fine. Like I wasn't in a place where I was going to make it mean anything about myself or not. Like I had healed that by kind of fixing how it was playing out in the rest of my life. But now, I can show up for him in a way that like I don't need to make it about me. And if he tries to make it about me, I don't need to take that on. I can release that. I don't have to like absorb his gunk, his dirty laundry. I don't need to take that on. Even if he tries to, I know better. I'm smarter. And in that way, I can actually show up for him. And it's more like I could see him almost like a child. Like I know him acting like that is just him hurting and him projecting. And I don't need to make it mean anything about me anymore. I've done that way too long. That narrative is worn out. I can release that. And in that, I can see him for what he really is, which is just suffering being. He's just painful. I mean, imagine how much pain you have to go through to treat your child like that. Like, I can't even imagine some of the things my dad said to me, saying, like, even thinking them about my daughter. You know what I mean? It's like, wow, how much pain he must be going through to treat me like that. That I just love him. I just hurt for him. But it's a process and you really have to take yourself out of it.
Thank you so
Marat, yeah, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I worried I might cry on this because this is kind of a heavy thing, so forgive me. Mariah, please share.
Hi, Krishna. All of this is resonating so much. Um, and I guess like my question is like I get setting boundaries, but my hang up that I think I'm like still hung up on all of this is like my nature is to be compassionate and to want to help and fix. And I get letting go of like needing to fix, and just holding that space, like I tend to either like be like an advice giver, or like I tend to like conform myself and like subdue my emotions so that the other person can like go through whatever they're going through and hold that space. But when you get into relationships with people, when I guess like the struggle is like, when do you realize like you have to take a step out and let them do their own work versus like being that compassionate, caring friend or partner to hold that space for them as they're doing that work. You know what I mean? Like, I guess only I could know that. Like, it depends on my own boundary, but my whole life I feel like this is something I've had to like work on. Like I like my mom would always be like, you know, don't try to be like overly compassionate for people. And I think so many of my relationships I've just been like this overly compassionate to where uh I don't like stand up for myself. But they're not like physically, they're not like really abusive or anything, but it's like subtly like, okay, is this person gonna like step up and figure their stuff out, or are they not? Like,
Hmm.
I don't know. I don't know. It's hard for me to
Yeah,
like explain it, but yeah, like finding that balance between being compassionate, holding that space for someone, or realizing like they just have to do their work and I have to just like give them that space to do their work. And make like, does that mean like the relationship has to end or not end, or yeah, like how far can you take the relationship? Yeah, I don't know. It's just like a
no,
whole.
what you're explaining, I think, is like something that we all struggle with and is like a continual thing. I think first off, boundaries are not just physical, they're also emotional.
Yeah,
Being compassionate, we can feel somebody else's pain, but at the same time, we can't take it on as our own, like to the point where it's like impeding us. Like maybe in a moment we can, experience that, but then we have to be able to let it go and to move on we can't get so entangled. Like we have our own body and mind that we have to try to dissociate with. We can't take on somebody else's body and mind. And that, I mean, because we don't even have any control over that, right? They're like, whatever they're going to do is whatever they're going to do. So now it's like even worse than being tethered to your own body and mind, because at least you have some level of control over that. But now you're tethered to somebody else's. Who knows what kind of wild ride you're going to go on, right? So we have to really understand that there is that boundary there, that that person is their own person and they're going to have their own experience and their own life and their own karma, like you said. And we have to respect that emotional boundary and allow them to have their journey and their process, because like Popey said, we're not God. Like we're not the controllers. We're not in charge of their experience. And having that compassion, what we can do with that compassion, we can recognize that we have that compassion and that's coming up for us and that's powerful. And we can use that to further, to be that example for other people, right? We can use that to strengthen our relationship with God, so that we're so grounded and we're so sturdy that these things we don't get disturbed by other people's waves. And that's going to be the biggest impact you can have in their life. Like, you want to be compassionate, do that, right? Like,
yeah,
and then you can really serve them in a way that you're not making it about you. But
yeah,
when we get so entangled with other people in these ways, it becomes about us very quick. And then we even become like blinded by our own attachments and aversions. And now we're like merged with this other person's body and mind. And this is why we have to be so careful when we choose our close relationships, because we're choosing that, who we're going to be merged with. And it's a real thing. Like these attachments, they're necessary in our lives, but we have to choose them so carefully, because that's what you're doing. You're tethering yourself to that person's body and mind. And unless, you're feeling like that level of trust and that level of alignment with them, that like, yeah, they're also doing the work. They're also taking care of themselves. They're also, maybe don't tether yourself so tightly to them. Maybe, and this is what happens, when we spend some time alone, we think, okay, I need to be really careful about who I'm dating,
Yeah.
because that's the most intimate relationship, right? That person you're very tied to. You can't help it. It happens. So we need to take this assessment period. How is this person going through life's difficulties? How are they handling ups and downs? Is this, and that's not to say that we can't be there for people. We can, but we have to be careful, because we have to know the impact that it's going to have to us. And we're on a journey ourselves. We're trying to realize this wisdom, and to take these steps. And we should choose a partner that can help us do that, and that we can help do that without getting so entangled that we're distracted from it. And I think it's a lot of that. You can have compassion, but maybe in a different way, maybe in the sidelines, without getting so involved. We say soft front, broad back, soft
Yeah.
heart, broad back.
Yeah.
And the emotional boundaries, I think, are huge. And that's not something you can see or even sometimes explain so much, or talk about in a relationship, but you can feel it. You can feel when you're a little bit maybe too pulled over, too drawn into to somebody else's drama. And
Yeah.
this is actually why I wanted to share this about my dad, because I felt so disturbed and so heavy in it. A feeling I felt my whole life. And I thought, I want to share this because I don't want to feel this anymore. I don't want to carry these things around with me. We have to imbibe this knowledge. We know we're not our body and mind. We got to be careful about why are we taking on other people's body and minds? This is
Right.
not even what this is. So, yeah, I don't know if that helps, but
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I guess like emotional boundaries, sometimes you don't see it, it's like sometimes
mm,
you're like, you think someone's like working on themselves, and like, I don't know, I like think about, my daughter's father. Like, we were together for 5 years, and like at first when we met, we were both like in school working on ourselves, getting things together, and then it was just like he just stopped taking care of himself in a certain way that like I felt like I wasn't being cared for. Like, it just got so like, I mean, there's so many other factors, but it's like, how do you like, in the beginning of a relationship, how do you talk about all those things? And like, I mean, yeah, I guess it's just talking about them, but it's like, how do you know if someone's gonna like, they seem a certain way, and then all of a sudden years down the line, it's like they kind of like give up on themselves, or they stop working on themselves, or they're going through something that like, is it like, I mean, I guess maybe I'm still holding on to guilt. Like, should I have just, kept being compassionate and held that space and like try to work through it? Or like, or did I do the right thing? Like letting it go and just working on myself and getting myself in a better space. And, I mean, even for myself, it's like, I'm like, okay, is this just like a low period? And I need to just, get back into working on my, like, because we all go through ups and downs. It's like, when do you need to just keep holding space, or when do you need to like take that break, like, but that's just,
yeah,
yeah, I guess that just comes with conversation and so many things. Like, I'm like looking back, so it's not like, anyways, but
sure. And
yeah,
the best thing, the best like bubble wrap I can think of to put yourself in for these things is making sure God is at the center, making
yeah,
sure God is at the center of your life, and then making sure God is at the center of your relationship. And in that, if two people are really doing that sincerely, then you're not making it about yourselves, and you're not so entangled in each other. I mean, there's going to be a level of that because it's a relationship, but God is at the center.
right,
And in that, if to the degree that God is the center of your life, you'll be attracted to somebody who imbibes those same qualities, that God is at the center of their lives. And in that, it helps you from getting too entangled with each other in a way that could lead to your demise. We need that center. We need that grounding, and that helps us in our evolution. That helps us and that elevates us, right? And that's what we're all here trying to do. So having that God-centered relationships is like paramount. It's almost like any other relationship is just going to be entangling.
Yeah.
And maybe we'll teach you some lessons, but it's going to be entangling ultimately.
Right.
Because it's two egos rubbing against each other.
Instead of like going towards a goal. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But to your point, sometimes you don't know. Sometimes, honestly, if things are one way at the beginning and then they are not 5-10 years later, and for whatever reason, that's also your lesson and thing to learn and go through. And sometimes even it's like I can tell you're thinking about, should have I done it like this? Should have I wait? It's like sometimes it's just accepting that things happened the way that things happened. And this was Krishna's arrangement for you. And where you are is just like making the best of it now and learning from where you were and knowing that the you now would handle it differently than the you then. But that's the journey. That's the process. And there's not always like a black and white great answer. We just do the best we can with what we've got, where we are, in what circumstance we're handed, and we try to learn and move and grow and handle it better the next time.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for sharing. Katie, please share with us.
Hi. Thank you. I hope you can hear me. I'm driving.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to share a boundary story, but first say I thank you so much for that inspiration and an idea to be more involved in the fall retreat. I think that it's really impactful, if you're like not just along for the ride, but actually thinking about contributing,
Yeah. And please text me if you're interested and let me know what's on your mind, how you want to contribute or be a part of it. And you don't have to either. You also can just come. But okay.
Well,
thank you.
I always want to do kirtan. So.
Oh, wonderful. Look at that. Okay, great. Let's get a good kirtan lineup and have a big, awesome kirtan. Wonderful.
Yeah. And also it reminded me of Gornatai, which is, I recently got deities in my house, which was a really Krishna arrangement. Like they just came to me. It was really amazing. And I was learning that, what was pointed out to me, by Baba Grahi, our mutual friend and my teacher, that like, they're all about sharing, so I think when you're saying like showing up and putting God in the center and sharing by example, really a devotee path involves like sharing this with others. So thanks so much. And then I realized that the story I want to mention is sandwiched by kirtan. So yeah, I had a good friendship, and it honestly was more of a drinking buddy, that I met about 9-10 years ago. And anyway, sorry, driving. And eventually, like, I realized along the way that this relationship wasn't making me happy. It was making me stressed out, and I didn't really like how I was being treated. And traditionally I'm pretty bad at like putting up boundaries or stepping away. And I have a habit of having like older, overbearing women relationships, honestly. I think of some patterns, But one day she was coming over to help with our taxes, because we kind of exchanged, like I would take care of her cat and every year she would do our taxes, So I happened to be doing some kirtan. And so I got to the door when she arrived, like 10 seconds later than I would, like in like 12 seconds instead of like 2 seconds. And she just kind of blew up on me, and we had this huge fight. And in it, I said, it just came out. Like I said, I really don't like the way you treat me sometimes. And I think my point is like Krishna, when we can't, when I can't remember to take care of my like emotional state and relationships, for me, Krishna just like forces it out of my mouth when I don't expect it. And sometimes it's really great. And then, you know, she reached out a little bit right after, but it was more of like, both of us need to apologize. And I was like, nope, nope, nope. I realize I'm done, you know, kind of thing. But recently, just last week, a mutual friend of ours passed away or left the body. And that's been a really interesting thing to be with this week in many ways. But then last night I was at the DC temple and you know, doing some kirtan, and the nice devotee who arranges it was like, do you want us to like dedicate this to your friend Julie, the friend who passed? You know, and I said, yeah, sure, you know, thank you so much. And it was really healing and helpful to have kirtan last night at this particular time. And then when the kirtan ended and I like was stepped out of the temple room, I see a text from Ashley, from the one that I had the fight with and hadn't spoken to in like 4 years at all, no contact, you know? And it was this really great text that was you know, good, sorry, very open, not, you know, it was just wonderful. It was like, it's been too long, life is short, I'm so sad, like, you know, because it was the three of us that were very close a long time ago. And it was just so kind of magical. And it was really great to stop having her in my life when it was time. And then I just almost can't believe kind of Krishna's magic of just last night is when we kind of got back in touch. And so I think like, you know, it's just a nice example of how, you know, the end, something that seems like the end might not be the end, where people go off and work on themselves or don't, or Krishna arranges it. So, you know, and I haven't really had that happen quite like that. I mean, sometimes I've had some reconnections, but yeah, thanks for hearing that, because it just seems so neat that something like that reconnection comes out of a separation with the other person, you know? So yeah, very well.
Yeah. No, it's beautiful. And it's true. You know, if we show up for ourselves and we make decisions for our soul's journey and evolution, we take care of ourselves first. We put that oxygen mask on ourselves first. Krishna arranges. I mean, everything becomes so beautiful. And then we're actually able to show up for people in a real way because we're not so entangled. And there's no other way. You know, we have to do that for ourselves. No matter what we're afraid of, you know, what is this going to mean for this relationship, or what am I going to lose, or what are people going to think? It's like, first we got to be the change, right? And then maybe others can be inspired, and maybe not, and that's okay too. Nicole, please share with us.
Hare Krishna. I'm sorry that I joined late today. I just what you guys are talking about, I had an experience yesterday, so I had to share with you. I actually had my birth chart read yesterday by Radikesh, and I have one of these very challenging relationships with my son's father, and that was one of the questions that I asked him when I had my chart read yesterday. I was like, "Do you see anything about him in my chart?" And he was like, I see him very clearly in your chart. Like, this is when you met. He's going to be very hard for you to deal with. It's not going to change. And so like that told me two things. I mean, one is that like I was destined to be in this challenging relationship with this person, and everything that we go through in our lives, like whether it's positive or negative, it's arranged by Krishna, because I cannot deny that in entering that relationship with him and now like finding my way to navigate this challenging relationship that I'm glued to with him, it is like just like forcing me to run towards Krishna, like in a way that I never would have if had I not been in this situation. And it just reminds me of, Radha, what you taught in your course in Urban Devi, which really, really stuck with me, like that pendulum of like in some situations we feel like we're God, and then in other situations we feel like the other person is God, and the way to stay centered is to put God in the center. And like that was 100% me with this person, this relationship. In the beginning of the relationship, I thought he was God, and to like remove myself from that and let him be who he is, accept who he is, accept that he is not the person that's going to save me in any way, and instead focus my energies on Krishna, because he's the one who is going to save me. And Radhikesh said this beautiful thing to me at the end of my session. He said, when you're at the ocean and you're right at the shore and the waves are big and they're crashing on you and they're scary and hurting you, the thing that you can do is you can go deeper into the water. If you go under the water a little bit more, the waves are still going to be there, but they're going to be less big and less painful. And when you're deep under the ocean, that's your relationship with Krishna. So focus on that and cultivate that relationship, and then the other things in your life are going to seem less big. So I just want to share that.
Wow, I have goosebumps. That was quite a share. So wonderful. Yeah, I can't. And that what you said, yeah, the pendulum, that's an important thing. Mariah was asking, how do we know? When we don't have God in the center, that's what we're doing. One person's God and the other person's serving God. And it just goes back and forth. And neither one is our natural being. And it creates unhealthy dynamics, right? Especially if it gets way like one person is, it's just unhealthy. When God is in the center and two people are really committed and sincere about that, it's okay, where am I trying to be God? Where am I making you God? And how can we better serve God together? And it's constantly coming back to that, because this is going to be our human experience. We're going to constantly get into these dynamics. But if we can continually come back to, okay, how are we off balance in this? Where's the balance? And how do we put God more in the center? Then we can work more towards, having this relationship help elevate us instead of, again, cause our demise. Because if God's not in the center, it's going to be difficult. Thank you. Such a nice share. Anybody else want to share with us today? Ramananda. Wonderful.
I'm sorry, I don't find that thing here how to announce this with his hand. So, so what I wanted to share that what's important to me is to remember that Arjuna, he is talking to his very intimate friend, and that's why it's so recommendable here what you're doing, and so praiseworthy, because yeah, you create this environment. I mean, my parents were alcoholic, the whole thing, very traumatic youth. And then I had a friend which was a vegetarian, and I looked up to that. He was like in the youth movement, the scouts, the leader, and I looked up to him. But then all of a sudden he had children, and he had two daughters, and his daughters, they went to school, they were eating meat, and he just gave it up, being vegetarian. So I was disappointed like that. So then, because of my mother being alcoholic and a whole very painful experience, I just quit. And I could come to our Radhadesh community here, our Hare Krishna community. And, like here we have, prasadam, we have food, vegetarian food, which is like, every day it's like so nice. So it's so easy to be vegetarian here, and that's one thing, like people have such a hard time to get out of all these things because also of the environment they are stuck to. And here you creating an environment which is different. We may not be all run away from our homes and go to a community like I've been able to do, but what you're doing here is kind of the same thing. There is this there is this I mean this stuff about the love languages. There's 5 love
Yeah.
languages. Yeah. So what you're doing here is quality time. There's definitely a sense of friendship, respect. You're hearing to each other, care, and that makes a whole different environment. And that's why it's so beautiful. And you can express, you can hear. And one thing for myself, which has made a big difference, that I have chosen, for example, I never spoke my mother language to my son, because here they all speak English, and Kamala, my wife, she was French. So just that was such an important thing. He also, I thought, I don't want him to be in that small time environment. If he speaks English, the world is open to him. What an important choice that was. Simply that makes all the difference, to be able to understand English and to talk in English. So that's why I'm able to join you here today. And I appreciate very much to hear to you. And I mean, there's much more I would like to say, but maybe, I'm just not here every day, but I appreciate it very much that I could be with you today.
I'm so happy that you're here today. It was such a wonderful surprise to see you. And honored for you to come, and I hope that you'll continue coming on Mondays and Thursdays. Mondays and Thursdays, 7:30 Eastern time. Please keep coming and be a part of our community and share your experiences and realizations with us. It's so profound, this coming together and doing this. And I love what you said too, creating that environment where we all can share and feel that that level of safety and non-judgment and acceptance, and know that we're all kind of connected in these experiences, and we're all just trying our best and messing up and coming back and reassessing and trying again, and that's the journey, that's the process, and it's so much better to try to do it together than to try to do it alone. So
they say that a child is traumatized not because he goes through from very tough experience, but he is traumatized because he is alone when he goes through that experience. So that's why it's so important that we connect.
Yes, thank you. That's a beautiful sentiment to end on here. And think about, everybody, please think about this Gita retreat idea. I think it's going to be, we're still trying to figure out the weekend. It's either going to be September 6th, the weekend of September 6th, or the weekend of September 27th. So it'll be one of those weekends. And if you want to be a part of it, if you want to serve somehow, text the thread, the Gita thread, let us know, or me personally, whatever you're comfortable with. And let's see what we can co-create here and try to create for, potential seekers and people that can join our community as well. So thank you all so much for being here today and sharing and tolerating us, going a little rogue and not doing the Gita, which is crazy for me. I never do. So thank you all. And hopefully I'll see you, what's today? Thursday. Okay. Hopefully I'll see you Monday. Yes.
Namaste. Thank you.
Namaste.
Thank you.